Good afternoon. My name is Ann Sermons Gillis, and I'm here today to talk about intuition. So, in terms of my own intuitive urge, and I believe everyone's intuitive urge, it starts when we're born. We're born with this wanting to be connected, and we are connected. And as just little tiny beings, we're so open and vibrantly alive that we want more confirmation of that connection, and we know also that we can get information and knowledge from that connection. And there's something that is in us that is like a call. And in the East, in Sanskrit, that word is called mutmashutva, and it can be experienced as a longing, but it's a call for truth. It's a call for connection. And I've felt that all my life. And I've explored that in many different realms. And one way to language that connection or talk about that connection is intuition. So that's what I'm going to be talking about is intuition. Also, like to mention that I live in the Woodlands, Texas, with my husband, Jim Gibson, who is my technical assistant and partner for life, and our dog, Lucy, who is a 57-pound bundle of joy, absolute joy, and she has a tremendous amount of intuition. Let me just turn on my light here so I can see. So if you live in a state of surrender in your life, and that is that you are really comfortable and everything is working the way it is, and there's no kind of longing or there's no need to get any more information, then you either are lazy, or you could be a mystic. A mystic is someone who's deeply connected and really doesn't have to get a lot of information because life is so settled in and so fulfilling that there's not a drive to get anything else. And we all have those periods of time in our life where we operate under the mystic standard. But there are also those times that we need help and we need guidance in our attitudes and in our actions, and that's when intuition really comes in good. So I have a daily affirmation for intuition, and I use that sometimes. I'm not in the period I use it, but for a long time I used to use it, and it was in a period of time when I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do in my business. I mean, I was in business, but I wasn't sure what step I needed to take that day. And the affirmation goes like this, and I'm going to repeat it 2 times. My intuitive guidance provides a day-to-day plan that serves the planet, blesses me with financial abundance, and allows spontaneity and creative expression. So again, my intuitive guidance provides a day-to-day plan that serves the planet, blesses me with financial abundance, and allows spontaneity and creative expression. The word intuition, when I think about it, I immediately think women's intuition. Women tend to have this extraordinary ability to guard their children. You've heard so many stories about a child being in danger and the mother getting there just in time to save them, or the mother that's awakened knowing that the child was in danger. I can remember one day I just had this flash, and I ran back to my daughter's bedroom, and she had the little space heater, and she was right beside it with her blanket, and her blanket was just about ready to catch on fire, and I had no idea that she had fallen asleep by the heater, and but I was there just in the nick of time. So women have been keepers of relationships, and they have taken care of emotions, especially the emotions of sadness and fear, and all of those things seem to mix in together to make women's intuition to be a certain flavor, distinct to women. And then there's men's intuition, and often they call that an instinct or sometimes even a feeling. I've heard men say things like, I don't know why I'm going to get into this deal. I really can't explain it, but I have a good feeling about it. And so men tend to use that instinct or intuition in their business. I used to sell insurance and casualty insurance, and there was a gentleman there, another agent, whose name was Harry Howard. And we had quotas that we had to meet, and I would see Harry, somebody would come to buy some insurance, and they would meet the underwriting standards, but he would turn them away. And I'd say, "Why did you turn them away?" And he said, "You'll see. You'll see that you'll have a hunch and that certain people are going to be a liability. There's just something about them." And sure enough, as the longer I was there as an agent and when I started underwriting people, I would have a hunch. And a lot of times I'd write those people anyway because I had certain criteria and I had to meet. And I would find that those people, sure enough, they would have a big claim or they would get canceled because they didn't pay their premium, but there was something fishy or something wrong with them. And I learned so much from Harry about underwriting insurance. Another word for intuition is the word psychic. And many people are really afraid of the word psychic. And it even conjures up a gypsy standing over a crystal ball. And the most famous word from gypsy is the word gypped. And we think about being gypped. We think that means that you're naive to believe something or that you've had a belief that led to a loss. But if we take a look at the origin of the word psychic, psychic really comes from the Greek word psyche. And psyche means soul. So the word psychic means of the soul. So I'm going to take a look at where does the information for intuition come from. It comes from a lot of places, but let's first look at the subconscious mind. So our senses take all kinds of material and store it in the mind, and our senses are extraordinary. Even Australian Aboriginal people have 17 senses. They know someone's coming. They can feel the vibration in their hands. We may hear when someone's coming, but they can feel the ground and they know when someone's coming from the vibrations. But 90% of our senses are occluded. So that means that we're getting a tremendous amount of information from our senses that we're not in touch with. That people who don't think find themselves in a linear fashion, like we do in the Western world, really find themselves out of place in a world where people use partial thinking. Because many cultures that are raised without the sense of separation are raised with holistic thinking. So let's look at the brain and how the brain works. Of course, everyone knows this. This is not anything new. The brain has incredible capacities. Everything that we see, think, hear, smell, touch, all of those things are recorded, plus more things at different levels that we don't have a language to express what they are. This information is coming in, and we can read that within our intuitive sense, but this information is coming in a wordless sense. It seems like the energy is coming to us. Well, and if we were able to deal with all the information that was coming in, well, we can't really deal with all the information that's coming in because we would lose focus. We need a certain amount of focus, so the brain will just take in certain information at a subconscious level and not a conscious level, because our conscious mind would be overloaded if we were just in touch with every single thing that was coming in. For example, if I'm trying to listen to you and there's a noise somewhere else, I'm going to focus my listening to you and tune out the noise that's somewhere else. But my brain is going to be recording that noise even though I'm not in touch with that noise at the time. So how do we use that subconscious mind? This is where the brain is putting all this information it's getting in. It's putting it in the subconscious mind. So how do we use the subconscious mind? Well, we use it for information retrieval, such as finding lost items, remembering names. We use it for memory. And where does this information in the subconscious mind come from? I've told about how we gather that. The senses are the gathering information, but where does the information come from? Well, the information comes from us because we have the awareness and then of what we see, think, and feel. But then we also get information from other people. We read their minds. We're human radios broadcasting signals, and other radios are broadcasting their thoughts. So other people around us have got their thoughts going on, and we can read their minds, we can read their bodies, and we can read their emotions. I mean, it's really easy to know that when you go in and you look at someone that's upset, we can easily read their bodies, we can read their eyes, we can read a lot about them without them having to say anything. And we also can read minds. I had an experience once with this young man that I did a trade with. And so he built a massage table for me. And this guy didn't use money. He was a bartering kind of person. And so the thing that he bartered for is he wanted me to make a sail for his sailboat. So I sewed a sail for his sailboat, and he made a massage table for me. And one day he was working in the house, and I had to go outside for something, and I had my wallet in the room that he was working in, and I had this hesitancy about leaving, and I thought, I know this guy, and I know his partner, and, he's an honest person, but I didn't want to leave that wallet. And later on that day, he started telling me the story about how he was doing some work for someone else and how the person came up and their wallet was missing. And they blamed him. And they actually didn't want him to work for him anymore. And so he left, and he felt ashamed. He hadn't done anything. He was angry because he hadn't done anything with the wallet. But later they found the wallet, and they realized that he hadn't taken it. And I feel certain that I was reading that story in his mind, and it influenced me about the whole thing of the wallet. So we do read other people's thoughts. We also read groups. That's where we can get our information. Groups have thoughts. A thought that a group can have is that life is dangerous, and this fear is broadcast within the group. If you get around a bunch of fearful people, even if no one says anything, you start having paranoid thoughts because we're reading the group mind. We're influenced by those thoughts. So if you take all the thought forms of a group and you put them together, it's what Jung called the collective unconscious. So the collective unconsciousness is to the group as the subconscious is to the individual. And there are many examples of using the collective minds. For example, you think of some person and they call. Or one day I was walking across my yard and I picked up a piece of paper, and it was an old piece of paper, and it had the name types on it, and I can't remember whether it was Eric Fromm or Rollo May. I think it was one of the two, and it was typed in the paper, and the paper was yellowed. And I found a newspaper that day. I was reading a newspaper, and that person had died that day. And so that was, I tapped into that collective unconsciousness. It can be called synchronicity, but what makes it a part of intuition in the group sense is that it was connected. That information just came from different sources and into my conscious awareness. So it also occurs in the when you think about somebody and you mysteriously run into them or get some information from out of the blue. I just heard a story about this occurring, but it reminded me of being in Thailand, and my daughter and I were in South Thailand, and I met this guy there, and we rented a boat to go snorkeling because we wanted to reduce the fee, and we both went snorkeling, and I ran into this guy on this little island several times. But when we went up to Bangkok, we ran into him in the subway, riding on the same subway train, and I said something to my daughter, and she says, "Oh, this happens to me all the time." But this would be like if you were in southern Florida, and then a few days later you ran into somebody in Maine. I mean, it was it was it was quite a long distance away, and that happened that we ran into each other in the subway, and we were in a town where there were like 12 million people. So these group connections occur frequently, and they're very surprising, very interesting, and very life-affirming. So we've talked about two places that we get this information, one from the individual, from ourselves, and also from the group mind. But what about the bigger intuition that we have? We get that from what might be called the superconscious mind or higher intelligence, or we could also call that a higher power. So when we contact the higher power and its intuitive wisdom that it's giving out, or this intelligence that it's giving out, we actually contact all three, the knowledge of the individual, the knowledge of the group, and the knowledge of the higher power. And we're connected to the when we are connected to this super consciousness, then things seem to be to work out for us. It makes our lives easier. It connects us to prosperity, and it keeps us safer. Now, the thoughts that we get from our higher power are not really the thoughts like humans think. They're creative energies that filter down from resonating energies of light and sound to something we can experience. As I mentioned before, even, when we're getting information from an individual, we get information in the form of energy, and that energy is translated by our intuition, and then it's put in a form that we can understand it in some kind of thought or frequency that we understand. Even if it doesn't come to us in a thought, we get a hunch that we want to do something. So how do we use our intuition? First, before I say how we use our intuition, I think it's important that we use love as a measuring stick or the cornerstone of life. And if we don't have that cornerstone in our life in place, then the intuition will be of no value whatsoever. If I just want intuition to make money, then I might make money, but my life will be totally unfulfilled. And also, I may be getting things for the wrong reason. And love is like the internal wise master. And the way it moves through our lives is it makes choices that are for the highest good of everyone. So I'm going to talk about some how-tos with intuition, and the first thing I would recommend, and you don't have to do this. I'm going to recommend several things, and I like the shotgun approach. I'm going to throw out several things, and if one of them fits, then use it. The first thing is to buy a notebook or a journal, and begin your notebook or journal with an intuition contract. This sends a message to your subconscious mind. I mean, don't just scribble it down. Just jazz it up. Make it special. Maybe you put a picture on it. And just say in this intuition contract, I, and then put your name, am open to intuitive guidance. I expect and trust my guidance and judiciously act from my intuition. And then sign and date your intuition contract. And in this notebook or journal, keep a record of the hunches that you have and the times that you had an intuitive knowing and that you followed up on them, so that you can begin to see how this intuition is working in your life. I found that the best turnaround of intuition in my life by far was the start of a meditation practice. If you meditate for 15 minutes, meditate for a minimum of 15 minutes a day and don't exceed 1 hour a day, and it opens up to the infinite mind, and it opens up to a place where the mind is still. And after a week, what happens if you meditate for 15 minutes a day is that you will note a dramatic difference in every area of your life. You'll be more focused. There'll be less drama in your life and mind, and things seem to fall together in unusual and beneficial ways. And just a little hint about meditation, and that is meditating when you're lying down is generally what we call a nap. So you have to sit up during meditation so that you won't sleep. Of course, if you're wanting to go to sleep at night, meditating lying down is really great. But in terms of the practice of meditation, you'll want to sit up. Also, developing a breath practice. The breath practice does a similar thing as a meditation practice, and that is that it slows the mind down so that we can get access to information, material, and experiences that are not in the local field of consciousness, the local mind field, or the local body field. So those are practices, and here are some techniques that you can use. One of them is how to remember a name. So when you want to remember a person's name, you can start repeating to yourself, I know that person's name, and I will remember it before, and you can say 2 o'clock that afternoon. And you just say, I know that person's name, and I'm going to remember it before such and such. Or the quick name retrieval plan, this is one I use very frequently, and that is I say to my subconscious mind, I'm going to count from 5 to 1. And when I reach 1, I'm going to tap my finger, and I say that, and I tap my finger so that my subconscious mind knows which finger I'm going to tap. And when I tap my finger, then that name is going to bubble up. And it almost always works. Even if it doesn't work immediately, I often find that within minutes or maybe even an hour or two later, the name will come bubbling up. So that's the quick method, the 5 to 1 method. So how do we use our intuition while we're driving? Oh, many of you have heard this, and that is that if you have a hunch to drive off the beaten path, then do it. And it doesn't really matter whether or not you ever know why you did it, or it may not have been important, but it's important in this way, and that is that it sends a signal to the mind that you're willing to take it seriously. Because if you're getting information and you keep shutting down to it and not using it, the mind just goes, she's not there, he's not there, and it shuts down our awareness. So how do we use our intuition? We can use it really to know what other people are thinking. So listen to yourself while you're around other people and notice unusual thoughts. Because if you have thoughts that are angry or off the cuff, it's often because you're picking up on their energy frequency or you're picking up on their direct thoughts. I've actually had visual pictures when I was around people that I would see certain things, like I'd see connections that they had. I know that I saw someone one time and I looked at him and I saw this woman and I thought, that's really strange. How could these two be connected? I knew that she was married. Well, they were having an affair. And, I directly just saw that when I heard her name and saw this picture flash. So moving on now, how do we use this in business? One way to do it is to make a list of prospects. If you're in sales, then somebody you think would use your product or service. And then look over the list and see if a name if there's a name that pops out. And if there is, contact that person. When I used to work for Allstate Insurance Company, we got these microfiches, and I would get a list of all my clients on the microfiche. This was pre-personal computer. And I could look at that list, and it would be something about the way one name looked, that it seemed to just be more vivid or stand out. And so I would call that person. And every time I called that person, I would always call saying, hi, this is Ann Gillis, and I'm your insurance agent, and I'm just calling to see if there's anything I can do for you today. Have you had any changes in the way you use your insurance? Have you added a car to your policy? Do you need more coverage on your homeowner's insurance? Or is there anything I can help you with your insurance? And there was usually something like, I'm thinking about buying an insurance policy for my baby. I'm thinking about getting mortgage insurance. I've just added an addition to my home, and I want to increase my homeowner's coverage. And I was just always completely surprised at how that worked. Another way to use the intuition is to have a mental picture of you calling the person and having them answer, and then just seeing what kind of mood they're in. Are they angry? Are they receptive? How are they? And then sending good vibrations to them, sending love vibrations, and just saying, "Hi, I'm here, and I just want to serve you, and I'm here to care about you, and like you, and love you," and then make the call. It seems like that pays the path to the telephone call, and it would make me, if I were doing that, feel more excited about calling the person. Can you imagine how that does? If you're going to call someone and you've just been thinking about loving them and caring about them, how much more influential that is in a positive way than thinking, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to call them. No one wants to hear from me." So next, moving on to finding a lost item. One way is to sit down and see the item in your mind, the lost item in your mind's eye, and then become the item. So if you've lost your keys, become the key, and just think, where am I? And then follow your hunches. And I do this thing that's called following my hunches without my mind. I try to close my mind up and let my body carry me around. And whether I'm looking for a shirt in the closet or whether I'm looking for lost keys, and I follow my body and let it move on its own with as little thought as possible. And I'm amazed at how many times it takes me to what it is that I'm looking for. When I'm frustrated and in a hurry, and I try to find something that's lost, this intuitive connection seems to be lost. But when I'm calm and I go in a more of an easier, relaxed attitude, it's amazing how many times I do find the item. When you have a lost item, don't keep repeating, "I can't find it, I can't find it, I can't find it," because what that does is it sends a message to the subconscious mind that says, "Don't find it, don't find it, don't find it." So you want to be sending the message to the subconscious mind, and that is things like, "I know where it is. I'm the one that put it there. I know where it is. I'm finding it." And so put that message in the subconscious mind and finding it. So how to use your intuition to resolve an issue. I found this is called the Cosmic Forces Exercise, and I found it in a book called Instant ESP many, many years ago. And I love it. I've used it many times. I've called it for years, and people have gotten some great answers and resolving problems from using this. And it goes like this. When you sit down and close your eyes and be sure that you're not going to have any interruptions. And just see yourself rising above yourself. Like, what would it be like to be at the top of your head? And then move on further up in the room, up to the top of the ceiling. And then move to the top of the house. And keep moving up into the clouds until you can see a landmass, until you can see the earth, until finally the earth becomes a star. And you're just out in the cosmos at the night with stars blinking in the sky. And look at the infinite space around you, and then talk to your higher power, the cosmic forces or the universe, and say out loud, "I have a problem or an issue." And then state what that problem is, and be expressive about it, just like you were talking to your best friend. And say, "Oh, this is going on," and blah, 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 blah. Use your hands. Be very much into it. And say, "And I need help. I need guidance. I need insight. Help me out." And when you feel like you've gotten it all out, then fold your arms out in front of you and say thank you 3 times. And be expectant. Get some paper and pen and write down any impressions that you have, and consider that you now have the help of a higher power in this matter. Whether this works only on the subconscious level or whether it works at the superconscious level, I can't tell you. But what I can tell you is it works. Another way to contact the intuition is through a dream journal. I can remember I've gotten all kinds of information from my journal, from my dreams, but I especially remember I took a course, and it was a course on intuition, and it was from a guy that was a stockbroker. and he had a dream about when to sell a certain stock. And he did sell the stock for his clients, and he saved them a fortune because the stock just like hit the bottom. But he had a very definitive dream. It was so powerful that he acted on it. Another way to use our intuition is to take notes. We get a lot of intuitive hunches and ideas, but we just simply forget them because we don't write them down. It's like when we have a dream and we wake up and it's very vivid and we think that we're going to remember it, but unless we write it down, we don't. Our hunches and the answers from our intuition come frequently, but because we don't take note, we say, oh, that's a really good idea. And we think, oh, I'll remember that and I can act from that. But put that in your intuition journal. How do we use our intuition? Another way is to pay attention in the moment and be present and act. We often get in trouble because we don't pay attention. We don't pay attention to what's going on. One time I was robbed at gunpoint, and I heard an inner voice. I heard it clearly say, throw your wallet in the car. And I stood there and argued with the voice. It's like, well, what are you talking about? Blah, 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 blah. And so these robbers came up, and they took my purse. And I don't have to get down on myself because I didn't listen, but I realize that sometimes in those kinds of situations, if it's odd, I might need to act and act quickly. So we need to pay attention, be present, and act. Another way to get intuitive guidance is to picture the future the way we want it, to see what it is that we want in life, whether it's just ourselves as being happy or there's certain things that we would like to see happen, and then ask this question: what would have to happen for this to come about? And then listen and write it down. In addition, there are actually some things that are tools of intuition that a lot of people use. I don't really use tools of intuition, but I've seen other people use them and do quite well with them. People use dowsing, they use muscle testing, they use a pendulum. I have a friend that does this dowsing thing with a pendulum, and she owns a store. And if you go in the store and you ask her, say, I need to buy a present for somebody, she'll do this little pendulum thing, and she'll say, oh, buy this or this or this. And I can just give her the name of someone, and she can tell me the present to buy, and she's pretty right on. I think it's amazing. So I'd like to close with a quote from Rumi, I think, except for the fact that, here it is. Now, Rumi was from Afghanistan, and he lived in about 1207. I've got that date down, and I'm not sure whether that's when he was born or when he died, but that's pretty close. We got the right century. And Rumi said, it is said that after Muhammad and his prophets, revelation does not descend upon anyone else. Why not? In fact, it does. But then it's not called revelation. It is what the prophet referred to when he said, the believer sees with the light of God. When the believer looks with God's light, he sees all things, the first, the last, the present, and the absent. For how can anything be hidden from God's light? So now I'd like to open up the lines, and Jim, if you can hear me and open up the lines, then let's do that if there are any questions or comments or answers.
What's the difference between the subconscious and the superconscious?
The subconscious is the things, you're saying the subconscious and the superconscious?
Yeah, you mentioned those, and
right.
I said, well, maybe one's a higher power and the other one's your own.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's it? That's it. The subconscious mind is what gathers information from the brain. It gets information from our senses, and it puts it all in there, and then it rearranges the information. It comes out in different ways. We have gestalts internally at that point, internally psychically in terms of wisdom, and it comes out that way. And then the superconscious mind is, which I talked about, is the connection with our higher power of God. And when you use a superconscious mind, you actually bring in all three accesses to intuition, which is through the individual, through the group mind, and through the higher power.
And so that's the mind that when there are days called and times called to pray. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. To pray or think about a certain military or political agenda. Everybody around the world at the same time. That's the super consciousness.
That would be the group consciousness.
That would be the collective consciousness.
Yeah, the collective. That would be the collective consciousness. And I mean, it could be, you could be in the super consciousness and that would be an activity of it, but generally if you're going to create a world day of prayer or call, then you're developing a group mind, and that group mind has the collective unconscious. And the collective unconscious is very influential because I'm saying, if you can just hang around a group of crazy people and you're going to feel crazy and it won't take long.
Too late. Thanks.
Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, and I just had this thing today. I don't know whether it was intention or intuition. It's probably both. I've been looking for someone to cut my hair that doesn't cost a lot of money, and I had 2 leads today that didn't work out. And I asked myself, so what are you going to do? I can't afford this amount of money every 6 weeks to get my hair cut. So, but I want somebody to cut my hair for the same price that they blow dry my hair. But nobody was willing to do that. And I said, somebody has to be willing to do that. So I went to the phone book, and there's like hundreds of beauty salons in the phone book. And my finger just went down the line until I stopped on this one. I called the number, and she said $14.95 for haircut. I said, does that include the blow dry? She said, well, since you're a new customer, I'll include it. We'll see how that goes from then on. And
okay.
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty neat.
Mm-hmm.
That out of all these hundreds of beauty salons, that I chose that one.
Great, yeah. And so that could be, that is, getting information from probably more than just the local, information. It could be that could come from the collective unconscious, because that information the salon knows that they're going to charge $14.95. So that's the group. That would be you getting the information from the group conscience, the group consciousness, and collective unconscious.
So is that where you get your parking places?
Huh?
Is that where you get your parking places?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say so, because it has to do with more than just you. It has to be a participant.
Sorry.
That's okay.
What was that thing you said to write down in a notebook? I am open to my intuition, and there was more to it.
My guidance for the day, my intuition, or the intuition contract, or the intuition contract, or the one for the daily intuition. So I am open to the intuition contract. Is I am open to my intuitive guidance.
Intuitive guidance. Okay.
I expect and trust my guidance and judiciously act from my intuition, and then sign and date your intuition contract. A person doesn't have to do this, but, keeping journals often focuses the mind. Oprah's had these gratitude journals. Mm-hmm. I've done a miracle journal before. I've done unexpected good journals. And so if you start with dream journals, just daily journals, but an intuitive journal focuses the mind. And I think what happens is that when we actually write something down like that, the subconscious mind says, oh, look, they're going to do something here. Let's cooperate with this, because our mind is very powerful. And so that's why I like to have contracts and books and outward symbols of the inner workings of the mind and the intuition. And sign and date your intuition contract.
Okay.
Okay. So, Judy, you had asked me a question the other day that I might bring up, and that question is, how do you tell the difference between your intuition and what else? What was the other thing you said? And do you remember? Do you remember what it was? How can you
I
tell?
remember asking you a question like that, but I don't remember.
Remember the whole thing? It's like, I think it was like, I guess, how do you know which voice you're listening to? Are you listening to your intuition, or are you listening to something that is not really that helpful to you, like your ego?
I think it was the difference between a good intuition and a bad intuition.
Yeah, or am I listening to my intuition, or am I listening to my ego?
Yeah.
I'm gonna pose it in that form,
right.
And saying that when we are listening to our intuition, something that's from our higher self to follow, that usually does not do anything that's extremely stupid. It doesn't do anything that's harmful. For example, if I'm riding down the road and I'm going around a curve and it says drive straight, I can be sure that's from my ego. Because anything from our intuition would never put us in danger. It would never have us take large sums of money and give it to people. It's a very, in a way, conservative sense and caring sense, and has a caring sense about it and a compassion sense about it. We would never hurt somebody. It would never involve any kind of shame or guilt. So that, when people tell me that they have a hunch to do something, there are a lot of times I can tell that it's based from their addictions. For somebody that has very little money, and then they find a program that if they get in this program and they spend a lot of money, that this is going to help them make money, and it's like, no, this doesn't make any sense at all for you right now. And people say, well, you have to spend money to get money. And it's like, well, you've got to look at what the situation is right now, and that is that they're overspender anyway, and they need money right now. They don't need to spend more money right now. So, when people get this information about spending money on certain things, I'm always like to look at their habits, and if they're really conscious and they understand their spending habits and how they're shopaholics or spendaholics, or they don't have a lot of money wisdom, then they find themselves using the voice in their mind just to support their spending addiction. Get high. I call it the helping high by buying people things they don't need. Helping high because I now feel indispensable, or helping high because I don't have to look at myself and my own pain. I'm going to help somebody else. There is, of course, a good and positive side of helping, in which is beneficial and it's good for everyone, but it's different from the ego-driven helping or listening to the intuitive voice. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to let it go with that. I appreciate y'all being on the call.
Thank you.
My sweet sisters. So take care.
Thank you, Ann.
Going to sign off.
Thanks, darling.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.